You think that was the end? That was just the prologue.
The champagne flute slipped from my fingers, shattering against the marble floor of Sloan's law firm like my entire world. 200 of Boston's elite turned to stare at Jack Connolly, the tech entrepreneur who'd just been publicly divorced at his wife's grand opening party. "Sign the papers and leave, Jack," Sloan said, her voice carrying across the silent room like a death sentence. She stood there in her $1,000 dress, every inch the successful attorney, handing me an envelope with the cold efficiency of a process server. "Consider this the first official act of Hartbeck and Associates." The laughter started as a ripple and became a wave. I recognized the faces, judges, politicians, old money families who'd never accepted me despite my $20 million in tech patents. They'd been waiting for this moment, watching our marriage like vultures circling a collapsing spectacle. "Test run husband finally getting returned to the store," someone whispered loud enough for me to hear. My hands didn't shake as I took the envelope. 15 years of marriage reduced to legal paperwork, delivered like a punchline at her career celebration. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd funded this entire venture, backed her dream of starting Boston's most exclusive law firm, and now she was using it to destroy me publicly. "Interesting timing, Sloan," I said, loud enough for the crowd to hear. "Right here, right now, in front of everyone." She smiled that ice-cold smile I'd fallen in love with back when I thought it was mysterious instead of cruel. "Efficiency, Jack. You taught me that in business." Trent Beck stepped closer to her side, his hand touching her lower back with casual ownership. The real estate golden boy, heir to Beck development fortune, everything I'd never be in their world. His smirk told me he'd been planning this moment as much as she had. "Nothing personal, Jack," Trent said, straightening his Harvard tie. "Sometimes investments don't pan out." The crowd was eating it up. Phones were out, recording my humiliation for social media posterity. Mrs. Brattle from the country club was practically salivating, already composing tomorrow's gossip in her head. Derek Williamson, Sloan's new partner, watched with the nervous excitement of someone witnessing a public execution. I looked around the room one more time, at the law firm I'd financed, the people I'd considered friends, the wife who'd just nuked our life for entertainment value. Then I did something that wiped the smirk off Trent's face and made Sloan's confident smile falter. I laughed. Not a bitter laugh or a broken man's sob, a genuine, amused chuckle that made the room shift uncomfortably. "You know what, Sloan? You're absolutely right about efficiency." I tucked the envelope into my jacket pocket without opening it. "I'll sign these tonight, but first, I need to make a few phone calls. Cancel some things. You understand?" Her eyes narrowed slightly. She knew me well enough to recognize when I was thinking, and after 15 years, she should have remembered that I was very good at problem solving. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be," she warned. "Harder?" I smiled back at her, matching her ice with something colder. "Sloan, I haven't even started making this easy yet." I walked toward the exit, the crowd parting like I was contagious. Behind me, I could hear the party resuming, voices buzzing with excitement over the drama they'd just witnessed. They thought the show was over. They had no idea it was just beginning. Outside, Boston's October air bit through my jacket as I pulled out my phone. 47 missed calls already, and the party had only been going for an hour. Word traveled fast in our social circle. I scrolled to my business manager's number and hit call. "Dave, it's Jack. I need you to execute Protocol 7 immediately. Every account, every investment, every line of credit connected to Sloan or her business ventures. Yes, tonight. Yes, all of it." The second call went to my patent attorney. "Michelle, that licensing deal we discussed for the Beck Development Smart Building Systems? End it. Immediately. And Michelle, make sure the cancellation is effective as of tonight." By the time I reached my car, my phone was buzzing with incoming calls. I ignored them all except one. "Benny, it's Jack. You free tonight? I'm about to need a private investigator who doesn't mind getting his hands dirty." "Jesus, Jack, what happened? The whole city's talking about some party." "The party's over, Benny, but the real show? That starts now." I drove home through the familiar streets of Beacon Hill, past the boutiques and restaurants where Sloan and I had played the happy couple for 15 years. My phone kept buzzing. Texts, calls, voicemails from friends and business associates who'd heard about the divorce announcement. The irony was perfect. Sloan thought she was cutting me loose before I could become a liability to her new firm's reputation. What she'd forgotten was simple math. I wasn't just her husband. I was her bank. Heart, Beck and Associates had exactly 12 hours before their primary investor pulled $20 million in funding. Trent's real estate empire had about the same amount of time before their smart building contracts evaporated, and Sloane's carefully constructed social standing was about to learn what happened when you humiliated a man who'd spent 20 years building a network of his own. I pulled into our driveway, my driveway technically, since the house was in my name, and sat in the car for a moment, watching the lights in what used to be our bedroom. She'd probably changed the locks already, the efficient attorney covering all her bases. Too bad she'd forgotten the most important rule of any hostile takeover. Make sure you actually understand what you're taking over. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Saw the news. Sorry, man. If you need anything, call me. Sam Rodriguez, my IT contractor, one of the few people who understood exactly how deep my technical capabilities ran and how many systems I'd personally designed for Boston's elite, including the security system for Trent's penthouse and the network infrastructure for Sloane's new law firm. I texted back, "Meet me at the workshop in an hour. Bring your laptop and a sense of humor." Then I got out of the car and walked toward my front door, fishing for keys I probably wouldn't need. After all, I'd installed the locks myself, along with every other security system in this house. The door opened before I could use my key. Sloane stood there, still in her party dress, but with her makeup slightly smudged. She'd been crying, which surprised me. I'd expected triumph, not tears. "Jack, we need to talk." "Now you want to talk? After the public execution?" She stepped aside to let me in, and I noticed she'd already packed 2 suitcases. Efficient, as always. It didn't have to be like that. Trent insisted on making a statement, said it would be better for the firm's image if we controlled the narrative. Trent insisted. I nodded, walking past her toward the kitchen. "How long, Sloane? How long what? How long have you been screwing him? And don't lie to me. I'm about to find out anyway, so you might as well save us both some time." She flinched at my tone. In 15 years of marriage, I'd never spoken to her with that particular edge of cold fury. 6 months, she admitted. It wasn't supposed to happen, it just happened, right? I opened the refrigerator and pulled out a beer, twisting off the cap with more force than necessary. "And the divorce papers? How long have you been planning tonight's little performance?" "Jack, please, I know you're hurt." "Hurt?" I took a long drink and studied her face. She was beautiful, even with smudged makeup and guilt written across her features. I'd fallen in love with that face, built a life around it, trusted it completely. "Sloane, I'm not hurt, I'm impressed. The timing, the venue, the audience, it was masterfully executed. You really are an excellent attorney." She looked confused by my calm tone. "Then why do you seem so what?" "So dangerous." I smiled at that. "Because, sweetheart, you just declared war on the wrong man, and unlike you, I don't need an audience to fight back." Benny LaRue arrived at my workshop at 11 p.m. sharp, carrying a 6-pack of beer and the weathered expression of a man who'd seen enough divorces to know when one was about to get ugly. He'd been my friend since college, back when we were both scraping by on dreams and determination. Unlike most of my social circle, Benny had earned his cynicism the hard way. "So," he said, settling into the leather chair across from my desk, "want to tell me why half of Boston's legal community is calling me tonight asking if you've hired a PI yet? Because they know what's coming." I pulled up Sloane's email account on my computer screen. And they're right to be worried. Sam arrived 20 minutes later, laptop bag slung over his shoulder and a grin on his face that told me he'd already heard the story. At 28, Sam Rodriguez was the best IT contractor in Boston, a quiet genius who'd helped me design security systems for half the city's elite. More importantly, he was one of the few people who understood exactly how much access that gave me. "Boss," he said, setting up his laptop on the workbench, "I've got to say, tonight's been educational. Did you know that Hart, Beck, and Associates' entire network infrastructure runs on systems you designed?" "Shocking coincidence," I replied dryly. Benny looked between us. "Please tell me we're not about to commit any felonies." "Nothing illegal," I assured him. "Just some aggressive asset management and reputation adjustment. Sam, show him what we found." Sam's fingers flew across his keyboard, pulling up a series of files and screenshots. "Okay, so I've been monitoring network traffic on the systems Jack installed. all perfectly legal since he built them and never signed away administrative access. What we found is interesting. The first document appeared on screen, an email chain between Sloan and Trent dating back 8 months, not 6. The subject line read, "Merger opportunities." They weren't just having an affair, Sam continued. They were planning a business merger. Sloan was going to use Jack's investment to establish the firm, then push him out and bring Trent in as the primary financial backer. Benny whistled low. That's cold, even for a lawyer. The next screen showed financial documents, loan applications, credit checks, asset evaluations, all dated 3 months ago, all showing Sloan's attempts to secure independent financing for the law firm. She tried to cut me out months ago, I realized, studying the numbers. When she couldn't get the funding without my backing, she decided to take a different approach. Gets better, Sam said, pulling up another folder. Check out the timeline on these hotel receipts. The evidence was devastating and detailed. Sloan and Trent had been meeting regularly at the Four Seasons, charging everything to accounts connected to my business expenses. They documented their affair with the thoroughness of people who thought they were untouchable. But the real prize was in Sloan's personal email folder, a draft document titled Domestic Relations Strategy. She was building a case, Benny said, reading over the legal language. Emotional misuse, financial control, possible infidelity allegations against you. I laughed, genuinely amused. She was going to frame me for the exact things she was doing. Classic projection, Sam agreed. And she documented everything. Emails to Trent about how to manage Jack's reaction, discussions with divorce attorneys about asset protection, even a timeline for when to serve you papers. Tonight wasn't spontaneous, I realized. The public humiliation, the timing, the venue. It was all calculated to make me look unstable when I reacted. Too bad she forgot who taught her about documentation and evidence preservation, Benny said. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Sloan was probably celebrating with Trent, toasting their successful coup. They thought they'd outmaneuvered me, used my own money and connections to destroy me publicly before I could fight back. They were about to learn why that was a mistake. Gentlemen, I said, turning back to face them, I want you to understand something. What we're about to do isn't revenge. It's justice. Sloan and Trent tried to destroy me using lies, manipulation, and theft. We're going to destroy them using the truth. What's the plan? Benny asked. I smiled, feeling something cold and calculating settle into place where my heart used to be. We're going to give them exactly what they gave me, a very public education and consequences. Starting with their money. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts. Sam, I need you to document every financial transaction between Sloan's business accounts and any Beck development entity. Benny, I need you to start building a timeline of their relationship, complete with photographs, receipts, and witness statements. What about you? I'm going to make some phone calls. See, the thing about being married to Boston's newest legal star is that you meet a lot of journalists. And after tonight's performance, they're all very interested in the story behind the story. I started with Amanda Chen at the Boston Herald, a business reporter who'd covered my tech patents and had always been fair in her coverage. She answered on the second ring. Jack, I heard about tonight. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry yet, Amanda. I'm calling because I think you might be interested in a story about financial fraud in Boston's legal community. I'm listening. What if I told you that Hart, Beck, and Associates was funded through embezzled business expenses and that their founding partners have been conducting their affair on stolen money? There was a pause. I'd say you better have documentation. I have documentation, financial records, email chains, hotel receipts, and a timeline that shows premeditated fraud going back 8 months. Interested? Send me everything. If it checks out, we'll run it tomorrow. The second call went to Michael Torres at Boston Magazine, a society reporter who specialized in exposing the dirty secrets of the city's elite. He'd been trying to get dirt on the Beck family for years. Michael, it's Jack Connolly. Remember how you said you'd love to get the real story on Trent Beck someday? Don't tell me you're calling in that favor tonight. I'm calling in that favor tonight. How would you like exclusive access to documents showing that Beck Development's golden boy has been using investor money to fund his extramarital affairs? Jesus, Jack, you work fast. I work smart. The question is, do you want the story or should I call Channel 7? Send me everything. I'll have it ready for the morning edition. By 2 a.m., I'd made 12 phone calls to reporters, bloggers, and social media influencers. By morning, Boston's media landscape would be very interested in the real story behind tonight's divorce announcement. Phase 1 complete, I announced to Benny and Sam, who were still working through financial documents and network logs. What's Phase 2? Benny asked. I pulled up the security system interface for Trent's penthouse building. Phase 2 is where we get creative. The system I'd installed for Beck Development's luxury properties was state-of-the-art, with remote access capabilities that I'd built in for maintenance purposes. What Trent didn't know was that I'd never transferred administrative control to his IT department. Sam, how long would it take you to program the building's elevator system to play a specific audio file every time someone presses the penthouse button? Sam grinned. About 10 minutes. What kind of audio file? I pulled up one of the recorded phone calls from Sloane's voicemail system, a particularly explicit conversation she'd had with Trent about their hotel activities. Something educational. That's diabolical, Benny said admiringly. That's just the beginning. I opened another interface, this one controlling the digital billboard outside Trent's office building. Sam, can you hack this display system? Boss, I designed that system. I can make it show whatever you want. Good. Because tomorrow morning, I want everyone driving into downtown Boston to see a very interesting slideshow. As the sun started to rise over Boston Harbor, we put the finishing touches on what Sam had dubbed Operation Public Education. Sloane and Trent had wanted to control the narrative of our divorce. Instead, they were about to become the main characters in a very different story. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Jack, this is Lila Hart. We need to talk. There are things about tonight you don't understand. Lila Hart, Sloane's best friend and the third partner in the new law firm. Interesting timing for a midnight confession. I showed the text to Benny and Sam. Could be a trap, Benny warned. Could be, I agreed. But it could also be someone jumping ship before it sinks. I texted back. Coffee shop on Newberry Street, 1 hour. Come alone. You sure about this? Sam asked. I looked out at the city waking up to what would become the biggest scandal in Boston's legal community in decades. Somewhere out there, Sloane was probably sleeping peacefully next to Trent, confident that she'd successfully destroyed me and secured her future. She was about to wake up to a very different reality. I'm sure, I said, because whatever Lila Hart wants to tell me, it's already too late to change what happens next. Lila Hart was already waiting when I arrived at the coffee shop, her usually perfect appearance disheveled and her hands shaking as she gripped her latte. She looked like a woman who'd spent the night staring at the ceiling, realizing she'd made a terrible mistake. Jack, she said as I sat down across from her, I need you to know that I never wanted it to happen like that. Like what? The public humiliation? The calculated betrayal? Or just the part where you helped my wife steal my money? She flinched. You don't understand. Sloane said you were having an affair, that you were planning to leave her anyway. She showed me bank records that looked like you were hiding money, preparing to screw her over in a divorce. And you believed her. She's my best friend. Was my best friend. Lila's voice cracked. But last night after you left, I heard her talking to Trent. They were laughing about how easy it was to fool everyone, including me. I studied her face, looking for signs of deception. Lila had always been the weak link in Sloane's circle, more follower than leader, more concerned with social standing than actual friendship. What exactly did you hear? Trent said something about phase 2 of their plan, about how getting rid of you was just the beginning. They're planning to push me out of the firm once it's established, bring in Trent as the primary partner. And you're telling me this because I just realized I'm next. She pulled out her phone and showed me a text message. This came in an hour ago. The message was from Sloane. Lila, we need to discuss your role in the firm's future. Some concerns have been raised about your commitment level. Let's talk tomorrow. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. So you want to make a deal, I said. I want to survive what's coming. Because something is coming, isn't it? The way you looked last night, the way you just accepted everything. That wasn't the reaction of a broken man. Smart woman. Too bad she'd figured it out 12 hours too late. My phone buzzed with a text from Sam. Billboard is live, elevator system active. Hotel receipts hit social media 10 minutes ago. I smiled and finished my coffee. Lila, I appreciate the information, but you're right about one thing. Something is definitely coming. I left her sitting there and walked outside into downtown Boston's morning rush hour. The digital billboard outside Beck Development's office building was clearly visible from the coffee shop, and I wanted to see Lila's reaction when she realized exactly what kind of something was coming. At exactly 8 a.m., Sam's programming kicked in. The billboard, which usually displayed advertisements for luxury condos and investment opportunities, began cycling through a series of images: hotel receipts showing charges to my business accounts, email screenshots detailing Sloan and Trent's affair, and bank records showing the systematic theft of funds intended for legitimate business expenses. The final image was a simple text message: Hart, Beck and Associates, built on lies, funded by theft. Through the coffee shop window, I watched Lila's face go white as she saw the display. Around her, other customers were pulling out phones, taking pictures, posting to social media. The morning commuters outside had stopped to stare, creating a crowd that grew larger by the minute. My phone rang. Sloan. Jack, what the heck is this? Good morning to you too, sweetheart. I assume you're referring to the educational display outside Trent's office? Take it down, now. I don't think I will. See, you wanted to control the narrative about our divorce. Consider this, my contribution to the conversation. This is harassment. I'll have you arrested. For what? Displaying publicly available financial records? Sharing documented evidence of fraud? Sloan, you're a lawyer. You know the difference between harassment and disclosure. I could hear Trent's voice in the background, angry and panicked. Good. We can work this out, Sloan said, her tone shifting to the negotiating voice I'd heard her use with opposing counsel. You're hurt. I understand that, but destroying us won't make you feel better. You're wrong about that. I'm feeling better already. I hung up and walked toward Beck Development's office building, curious to see the crowd that had gathered. What I found exceeded my expectations. At least 50 people stood on the sidewalk, phones out, recording and sharing the billboard display. Several were pointing at the building entrance, where Trent Beck was trying to push through the crowd to reach his office. He looked like heck. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his expensive suit wrinkled, his face flushed with anger and embarrassment. When he saw me approaching, his expression shifted to pure rage. "You son of a witch!" he snarled, pushing toward me through the crowd. "You think this is funny?" Actually, yes, I think it's hilarious. I pulled out my phone and started recording. Tell me, Trent, how does it feel to be the center of attention? Turn off that camera. Why? Afraid of a little publicity? I thought you loved being in the spotlight. The crowd was eating it up, their own phones capturing every moment of Trent's meltdown. This was better than I'd hoped. Not only was the evidence of their fraud going viral, but Trent was providing real-time entertainment by losing his composure in public. "You want to destroy me?" he said, stepping closer. "Fine, but I'll take you down with me." "With what? The truth? Because that's all I'm sharing, Trent. Your own words, your own financial records, your own choices." He swung at me then, a clumsy right hook that I easily sidestepped. The crowd gasped and surged backward as Trent stumbled, his momentum carrying him into a nearby trash can. The sound of metal hitting concrete was punctuated by the click of dozens of phone cameras. "Assault!" someone in the crowd called out. "I got it on video!" Trent scrambled to his feet, his face now red with humiliation as well as anger. "This isn't over." "You're right," I agreed. "It's not." I walked away, leaving him standing there in front of his office building while the billboard continued its educational slideshow above his head. Behind me, I could hear the crowd's excited chatter as they shared videos and photos across social media platforms. Phase 2 was complete. My phone was buzzing constantly now. Calls from reporters, texts from business associates, voicemails from mutual friends who'd heard about the morning's events. I ignored them all, except one, a call from Amanda Chen at the Boston Herald. "Jack, I need to ask you some questions about the documents you sent me." "Ask away." "The financial records showing systematic theft from your business accounts. Are you pressing charges?" "I'm considering it. Why?" "Because the district attorney's office just called. They're opening an investigation into possible fraud charges against Hart, Beck and Associates." I stopped walking. "They called you?" "They called everyone. This story is about to get much bigger than a simple divorce scandal." Perfect. I'd wanted to destroy Sloan and Trent's reputations, but if the legal system wanted to get involved, I wasn't going to complain. "Amanda, I'll give you an exclusive interview this afternoon. Full story, complete documentation, everything." "Deal." "But Jack, be careful. People like the Becks don't go down quietly." She was right, of course. Trent came from old Boston money, the kind of family that was used to making problems disappear through influence and intimidation. But he'd made one critical mistake. He targeted someone who understood exactly how Boston's power structure worked Because I'd been building my own network for 20 years. I called Benny. How's our timeline coming? Better than expected. I've got witness statements from hotel staff, restaurant workers, even a parking attendant who remember seeing them together. Plus, Mrs. Brattle from the country club has been very helpful. Mrs. Brattle? Apparently, she's been documenting Sloan and Trent's relationship for months. She's got photos, dates, times, even some audio recordings from country club events. I had to laugh. Mrs. Brattle, the neighborhood gossip I'd always found annoying, had been building a case file without even realizing it. What kind of audio recordings? Conversations between Sloan and her friends about the affair, discussions about divorce strategy, even some details about their financial planning. She recorded everything on her phone because she thought it was interesting. It's about to become very interesting. Set up a meeting with her this afternoon. Already done. She's excited to be part of what she's calling the story of the century. By noon, the story had exploded across Boston's media landscape. The Herald ran Amanda's article on the front page. Legal power couple built empire on fraud. Boston Magazine published Michael Torres's piece online. The Beck family's latest scandal. 3 local TV stations picked up the story for their evening broadcasts. But the real damage was happening on social media, where the billboard photos and Trent's public meltdown had gone viral. Beck development fraud was trending locally, and someone had created a TikTok compilation of Trent's attempted assault set to comedy music. My phone rang again. This time it was Derek Williamson, the third partner at Beck and Associates. Jack, we need to talk. Privately. I'm listening. Not over the phone. Meet me at the Prudential Center food court in an hour. Come alone. Interesting. Derek had been the quiet partner in Sloan's firm, the one who handled the boring corporate work while she and Lila focused on high-profile cases. If he was reaching out, it meant the firm was in serious trouble. I found him sitting at a corner table, looking like a man who'd aged 10 years in 12 hours. His usually immaculate appearance was disheveled, his hands shaking slightly as he gripped his coffee cup. "This is a disaster," he said without preamble. "The phones haven't stopped ringing. Clients are canceling contracts. The bank is asking questions about our financing, and the Bar Association is launching an ethics investigation. Sounds like you're having a bad day." "Cut the crap, Jack. You've destroyed us. The question is, what do you want?" I studied his face, looking for signs of deception or desperation. What I saw was a man who'd realized he'd tied his professional future to people who'd just destroyed their own reputations. "What I want is justice, Derek. Your partners stole from me, lied to everyone including you, and tried to destroy my reputation to cover their tracks. I didn't know about the affair or the financial irregularities. I swear to God, Jack, I thought this was a legitimate business venture." "I believe you. Which is why I'm going to make you an offer." His eyes widened slightly. "What kind of offer?" "Full cooperation with the investigation. Complete financial disclosure. Public statement acknowledging the fraud and distancing yourself from Sloan and Trent's actions. And in exchange, your name stays out of the criminal charges. You get to rebuild your career instead of watching it burn down with theirs." Derek was quiet for a long moment, weighing his options. Finally, he nodded. "What do you need me to do?" "Everything. Financial records, email communications, meeting notes, client files. I want a complete picture of how they operated and who else might have been involved." "There's something else you should know," Derek said quietly. "Lila Hart wasn't as innocent as she pretended this morning. She knew about the affair from the beginning, helped cover it up, even provided alibis for their hotel meetings." "Interesting. What else?" "They were planning to push you out even before the divorce. Sloan had already drafted papers to remove you as a financial backer and replace you with Trent. The affair was just a convenient excuse." The pieces were falling into place. This hadn't been a crime of passion or a marriage that fell apart naturally. It had been a calculated business takeover disguised as a personal relationship. "Derek, you just saved your career. Maybe your freedom too." I left him sitting there and walked back toward my car, feeling the satisfaction of a plan coming together perfectly. Sloan and Trent had thought they were playing chess while I was playing checkers. Instead, they'd been playing checkers while I was playing three-dimensional chess. My phone buzzed with a text from Sam. "Boss, you need to see the news. Turn on Channel 7. I found the nearest sports bar and asked them to change the channel. What I saw made me smile wider than I had in months. The news anchor was standing outside the offices of Beck and Associates, where a crowd of protesters had gathered. Signs reading "Justice for Jack" and "Stop Legal Fraud" filled the frame, while the reporter explained how social media had turned a personal divorce into a public crusade for accountability. This is just the beginning, I said to myself, watching Sloane's dream firm crumble in real time. The real show was about to start. The call came at 6 a.m. on Thursday, 3 days after the billboard incident. Sloane's voice was different, smaller, desperate, stripped of the confident authority I'd known for 15 years. "Jack, please, we need to talk, really talk." I was already awake, sitting in my workshop reviewing the final phase of what Sam had started calling Operation Complete Destruction. The morning news was playing on my laptop, showing footage of FBI agents carrying boxes out of Hart, Beck & Associates offices. The federal investigation had moved faster than even I'd expected. "I'm listening," I said, though I was really watching the news footage of Trent Beck being led away in handcuffs. "Not over the phone. Meet me at the Four Seasons. The same suite where—" her voice broke. "The same suite where this all started." The irony was perfect. She wanted to meet in the hotel room where she conducted her affair, using money stolen from my accounts. Either she had no sense of irony, or she was more broken than I'd realized. 1 hour, I agreed. I called Benny and Sam, bringing them up to speed on the meeting. "Could be a trap," Benny warned, echoing his concern from earlier in the week. "Definitely a trap," Sam agreed. "But the question is, who's trapping who?" I smiled at that. "Gentlemen, after what happened to Trent this morning, I don't think Sloane is in a position to trap anyone." The news had broken at 5 a.m. Trent Beck, heir to Beck Development fortune, arrested on charges of wire fraud, money laundering, and racketeering. The investigation had uncovered a pattern of financial crimes going back 3 years, using his real estate developments to launder money from various illegal sources. My divorce scandal had accidentally exposed a much larger criminal enterprise. "The FBI wants to talk to you this afternoon," Benny said. "Something about your role as a witness in their investigation. Happy to help, but first, I want to hear what Sloane has to say." The Four Seasons suite was exactly as I remembered it from the photographs Sam had recovered from Sloane's email account. Expensive, tasteful, and tainted by the memory of betrayal. Sloane was waiting by the window, looking out at Boston Harbor with the hollow expression of someone who'd lost everything. She'd aged in the past week. Her perfect hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, her designer clothes replaced by jeans and a sweater. She looked like the woman I'd married 20 years ago, before ambition and social climbing had transformed her into someone I barely recognized. "Thank you for coming," she said without turning around. "You said we needed to talk." So talk. She finally faced me, and I saw tears in her eyes. Real tears, not the calculated emotion she'd used during our marriage when she wanted something. "I never meant for it to go this far. The affair, yes. The divorce, yes, but not all of this." She gestured toward the TV, which was showing news coverage of the FBI raids. "What did you think would happen, Sloane? You publicly humiliated me, stole my money, and tried to destroy my reputation. Did you expect me to just disappear quietly? I thought you'd be hurt, angry. I thought you'd fight the divorce, maybe try to get a better settlement. I never imagined you'd—" She struggled for words. "I never imagined you'd destroy everything." "I didn't destroy anything. I just told the truth." "The truth?" She laughed bitterly. "The truth is that I fell in love with someone else. The truth is that our marriage had been dead for years. The truth is that I wanted out, and I was too much of a coward to just ask for a divorce." "And the stolen money? The fraudulent business expenses? The systematic theft from my accounts?" Her face crumpled. "That was Trent's idea. He said it was just borrowing, that we'd pay it back once the firm was established. He said you'd never notice because you had so much money. Trent said a lot of things, apparently, like how he was going to push you out of the firm once it was established." She stared at me. "What?" I pulled out my phone and played one of the audio recordings Derek had provided, a conversation between Trent and his business manager about replacing Sloane and Lila with more reliable partners once the initial investment was secured. "You were never his partner, Sloane. You were his mark." She sank into a chair, the full scope of her situation finally becoming clear. "He used me. He used both of us. The difference is I fought back. And now he's in jail, the firm is destroyed, and I'm facing disbarment proceedings." She looked up at me with something that might have been hope. "But you could stop this. You could tell the FBI that I was manipulated, that I didn't know about the larger fraud scheme. Is that what this meeting is about? You want me to save you? I want you to remember that we loved each other once, that we built a life together, that we were happy before everything went wrong. I studied her face, looking for the woman I'd married. She was still there, underneath the desperation and fear. But she was a stranger now. The person I'd loved had made choices that led us to this moment. Sloan, do you know what the worst part of this whole thing was? The public humiliation? No. The worst part was realizing that you'd been planning to betray me for months, and I never saw it coming. The worst part was understanding that the woman I'd loved and trusted for 15 years was capable of that level of deception. I'm sorry. God, Jack, I'm so sorry. I know you are, but sorry doesn't undo what you did. Sorry doesn't give me back the years I spent building a life with someone who was planning to destroy me. She was crying openly now, the composed attorney mask completely gone. What do you want from me? What can I do to make this right? Nothing. There's nothing you can do because this isn't about making things right. This is about consequences. I stood up and walked toward the door, then stopped and looked back at her one final time. For what it's worth, Sloan, I did love you. But the woman I loved wouldn't have done what you did. She died somewhere along the way, and I never got to say goodbye to her. I left her there in the hotel suite, surrounded by the wreckage of her choices and the ghost of our marriage. In the elevator, I felt something shift inside me. Not satisfaction, exactly, but a sense of completion. The angry, betrayed husband who'd walked out of that law firm gala was gone, replaced by someone harder and more calculating. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. We need to meet. There are things about Sloan you don't know. L. Lila Hart, still trying to play both sides even as her world collapsed around her. I texted back, too late, but thanks for playing. The FBI interview that afternoon was surprisingly pleasant. Agent Sarah Mitchell was professional, thorough, and clearly impressed by the documentation I'd assembled. Mr. Connolly, your evidence has been instrumental in exposing what appears to be a multi-million-dollar fraud scheme. We're grateful for your cooperation. Happy to help. Justice should be served. There is one thing I need to ask you about: the timing of your retaliation. Some people might say you orchestrated this exposure for personal revenge rather than public interest. I smiled at that. Agent Mitchell, my wife and her lover stole money from my accounts, used it to fund their affair, and then publicly humiliated me to cover their tracks. When I discovered evidence of their crimes, I did what any citizen should do. I reported it to the authorities and made the information public. Through a digital billboard and social media campaign. Through the most effective means available. Would you prefer I'd kept quiet about the fraud? She smiled back. No, Mr. Connolly. I think you handled it exactly right. That evening, I sat in my workshop with Benny and Sam, watching the news coverage of what reporters were calling the biggest legal scandal in Boston history. Hart, Beck, and Associates had officially dissolved. Sloan was facing disbarment and possible criminal charges. Trent was in federal custody awaiting trial. Lila Hart had fled to her parents' house in Vermont. So what's next? Sam asked. Next, I rebuild my life without the dead weight I've been carrying for 15 years. Any regrets? Benny asked. I thought about that question seriously. Did I regret destroying the people who tried to destroy me? Did I regret exposing their crimes and lies? Did I regret fighting back instead of accepting my humiliation quietly? No, I said finally. No regrets at all. My phone rang one final time. The caller ID showed Sloan's number, but I didn't answer. Whatever she wanted to say, whatever final plea or threat or apology she had prepared, I wasn't interested in hearing it. The woman I'd loved was gone. The woman who'd betrayed me was facing the consequences of her choices. And I was finally free to discover who I was without either of them. Outside my window, Boston glittered in the darkness, full of possibilities and new beginnings. Tomorrow, I would start building a different life. One based on truth instead of lies, on justice instead of betrayal. Tonight, I was content to sit in my workshop and watch the world I'd destroyed burn down to ash. It had been a good week's work. The final confrontation came exactly 2 weeks after the law firm gala, in the most unlikely of places, the Beacon Hill Country Club's annual charity auction. I hadn't planned to attend, but Mrs. Brattle had called that morning with information too good to ignore. Jack, dear, you simply must come tonight. Sloan and that Hart woman are going to make some sort of public statement. They think they can rehabilitate their reputations by playing the victim card. What kind of statement? Something about being manipulated by Trent Beck? how they were innocent dupes in his criminal scheme. Lila's been calling everyone, trying to drum up sympathy and support. I smiled at that. Even facing complete ruin, they were still trying to manipulate the narrative. Mrs. Brattle, I'll be there, and thank you for all your help this week. Oh, my pleasure, dear. This has been the most excitement we've had at the club in years. I arrived at the charity auction fashionably late, wearing my best suit and the confident smile of a man who'd already won the war. The country club's main ballroom was packed with Boston's social elite, the same crowd that had witnessed my public humiliation 2 weeks earlier. The difference in their reception was remarkable. Instead of whispered gossip and barely concealed amusement, I was greeted with respectful nods and genuine sympathy. The story had spread through Boston's social circles. Jack Connolly, the wronged husband who'd exposed a major fraud scheme and brought justice to the legal community. I was no longer the embarrassing test-run husband. I was the man who'd fought back and won. Jack! Amanda Chen from the Boston Herald approached with her photographer in tow. I'm surprised to see you here tonight. Wouldn't miss it. I hear there's going to be some interesting entertainment. She grinned. You mean the Sloan Connolly redemption tour? This should be fascinating. I found a table near the back of the room, close enough to see everything but far enough away to avoid any direct confrontation. Benny joined me a few minutes later, looking uncomfortable in his rented tuxedo but grinning with anticipation. This feels like watching a car crash in slow motion, he said. The best kind of car crash. The kind where the drivers deserve what's coming to them. The auction proceeded normally for the first hour, expensive art, luxury vacations, and exclusive experiences being bid on by people with more money than sense. Then, during a brief intermission, Lila Hart took the stage. She looked terrible. Her usual polished appearance had been replaced by a gaunt, desperate look that made her seem older than her years. When she spoke, her voice shook with barely controlled emotion. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. As many of you know, I've been through a difficult period recently, dealing with the aftermath of Trent Beck's criminal activities. A murmur ran through the crowd. This wasn't the typical charity auction entertainment. I want to set the record straight about my involvement in the Hart Beck and Associates scandal. I was manipulated and deceived by Trent Beck, who used my friendship with Sloan Connolly to gain access to confidential information and financial resources. She was good, I had to admit. The trembling voice, the wounded expression, the careful choice of words that painted her as a victim rather than an accomplice. Sloan and I were both victims of Trent's manipulation. We trusted him, believed in him, and he betrayed that trust in the most devastating way possible. The crowd was listening intently now, some faces showing sympathy for Lila's apparent distress. She was winning them over, creating doubt about the narrative that had dominated the news for 2 weeks. Then Sloan took the stage. My ex-wife looked better than she had at our hotel meeting, her appearance carefully crafted to project dignity and resilience. She wore a simple black dress that suggested mourning rather than celebration, and her makeup was subtle enough to show vulnerability without appearing weak. Thank you, Lila, and thank you all for being here tonight. Her voice was steady, professional, the voice of an attorney making a closing argument. I want to address the events of the past 2 weeks directly and honestly. She paused, letting the silence build dramatic tension. I made mistakes in my marriage to Jack Connolly. I take full responsibility for those mistakes, and I deeply regret the pain I caused him. But I want to be clear about something. The financial irregularities that have been reported in the media were not my idea, not my plan, and not something I fully understood until it was too late. More murmurs from the crowd. She was playing this perfectly, acknowledging just enough guilt to seem honest, while deflecting the serious criminal charges onto Trent. Trent Beck is a master manipulator who preyed on my emotional vulnerability during a difficult time in my marriage. He convinced me that certain financial arrangements were standard business practices, and I trusted his expertise in ways I now deeply regret. I had to admire her performance. She was throwing Trent completely under the bus while positioning herself as another one of his victims. It was exactly the kind of legal strategy I would have expected from her. I know that some of you may find it hard to forgive my personal choices, and I understand that. But I hope you can see that I, like Lila, was manipulated by someone who saw our friendship and professional ambitions as opportunities to exploit. The crowd was buying it. I could see the sympathy in their faces, the willingness to believe that these two successful, intelligent women had been duped by a criminal mastermind. It was time for my entrance. I stood up and began walking toward the stage, my movement causing a ripple of attention through the crowd. Conversation stopped, heads turned, and the atmosphere in the room shifted from sympathetic to electric with anticipation. Sloane saw me coming, and her carefully composed expression faltered for just a moment. Lila went pale, gripping the podium for support. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, my voice carrying easily through the silent ballroom, "I hope you'll forgive the interruption, but I think there are some facts missing from tonight's presentation." The crowd was riveted now, phones coming out to record what everyone sensed would be a dramatic confrontation. "Sloane, Lila, that was a beautiful performance. Really moving. But I think our friends here deserve to hear the complete story." I reached the stage and turned to face the crowd, ignoring the two women behind me. "You've heard about manipulation and deception tonight, and you're absolutely right that those things happen. But the manipulation didn't start with Trent Beck. It started 8 months ago, when my wife began planning to destroy our marriage for financial gain. I pulled out my phone and connected it to the room's audio system, a feature I'd installed myself when the club upgraded their technology 2 years earlier. I'd like you to hear something. This is a recording of a conversation between Sloane and Lila from 3 months ago, discussing their strategy for the divorce." Sloane's voice filled the ballroom, crystal clear and utterly incriminating. "The key is making Jack look unstable when I serve him. If we do it publicly with enough witnesses, he'll react emotionally and prove our case about his controlling behavior." Lila's voice responded, "What about the money transfers? Won't he notice? By the time he figures it out, it'll be too late. Trent's lawyers have already prepared the paperwork to make it look like Jack was hiding assets from me." The silence in the ballroom was absolute. Every face in the crowd showed shock, disgust, or anger as they realized how completely they'd been deceived by tonight's performance. "That recording was made in this very building," I continued, "during a planning session for what they called Operation Divorce Jack. Not very creative, but certainly effective." I played another recording, this one of Sloane and Trent, discussing their plan to frame me for domestic misuse. "If Jack gets violent during the divorce proceedings, we can get a restraining order and freeze all his assets. Even if the charges don't stick, the damage to his reputation will be permanent." The crowd was getting restless now, angry murmurs building as they realized the scope of the deception they'd just witnessed. "One more recording," I said. "This is from last week, after Trent's arrest. Sloane talking to her lawyer about damage control." Sloane's voice again. "The important thing is shifting all the blame to Trent. We play up the manipulation angle, make ourselves look like victims. These people are sheep. They'll believe whatever story makes them feel better about their own marriages." The reaction was immediate and explosive. The crowd erupted in angry shouts, with several people calling for security to remove Sloane and Lila from the premises. Others were already posting the recordings to social media, ensuring that tonight's revelations would spread far beyond this room. I turned back to face the two women who had tried to destroy me. "Sloane, Lila, I want to thank you for tonight's performance. It was exactly what I needed to complete my collection of evidence for the FBI's investigation." Sloane's composed mask had completely shattered. "You bastard. You planned this whole thing." "I planned to defend myself against people who tried to destroy me through lies and manipulation. The fact that you walked into this trap so willingly just proves how little you understand about the man you tried to betray." Security was moving toward the stage now, responding to calls from the crowd to remove the two women. But I held up a hand to stop them. "Let them leave on their own. They've embarrassed themselves enough for one evening." As Sloane and Lila fled the stage and pushed through the hostile crowd toward the exit, I remained at the podium, watching their final humiliation with complete satisfaction. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said to the crowd, "I apologize for disrupting your evening, but I thought you deserved to know the truth about the people who tried to manipulate your sympathy tonight." The applause started slowly and built to a thunderous ovation. These people had been ready to forgive and support two women they believed were victims. Instead, they discovered they were almost victims themselves, nearly manipulated into supporting the very criminals who had tried to destroy an innocent man. As the crowd gradually returned to their conversations and the auction resumed, I made my way toward the exit. The evening's work was complete, and I had no interest in staying for the aftermath. Outside the country club, I found Sloane waiting by the valet stand, tears streaming down her face as she waited for her car. "Jack, please, this has to stop." It has stopped. It's over. You lost. I lost everything. My career, my reputation, my friends, my family. Isn't that enough? I looked at her one final time. This woman who had shared my life for 15 years before deciding to destroy it. No, I said simply. It's not enough because you didn't just try to divorce me, Sloan. You tried to destroy me completely, and you would have succeeded if I hadn't fought back. You deserve everything that's happened to you. Her car arrived, and she got in without another word. As she drove away, I realized I felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, no regret. The woman I'd loved was gone, and the woman who'd betrayed me had been completely defeated. I walked to my own car, pulling out my phone to check the social media response to tonight's recordings. The videos were already going viral, with #SloanExposed trending nationally. By morning, the story would be everywhere, ensuring that Sloan and Lila's reputations were destroyed permanently. My phone buzzed with a text from Sam. "Boss, the FBI called. They want to meet tomorrow about additional charges based on tonight's evidence." Perfect. The criminal case would ensure that tonight's humiliation was followed by legal consequences that would last for years. As I drove home through the familiar streets of Boston, I reflected on the past 2 weeks. I'd started as the humiliated, test-run husband, publicly divorced and socially embarrassed. I was ending as the man who'd exposed a major fraud scheme, brought criminals to justice, and proved that sometimes the underdog wins by being smarter, more patient, and more ruthless than his enemies. Sloan had wanted to control the narrative of our divorce. Instead, she'd given me the perfect opportunity to control the narrative of her destruction. The party was over. So was their future. I'd left them with nothing but ashes and each other, and I'd done it using nothing but the truth and their own recorded words. It had been a perfect revenge.